Life had never handed Emily Carter a silver spoon. Every day was a battle to keep food on the table, a roof over her son Jack's head, and hope alive in their small, crumbling apartment. But when the eviction notice arrived, tearing their fragile world apart, Emily thought she had hit rock bottom. Until a chance encounter with one of the world's most beloved stars changed everything. What began as an ordinary day at the diner spiraled into an extraordinary journey of kindness, resilience, and second chances. Watch to the end to find out the rest of the story. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a comment about where you're watching from. Your support will help me tell more stories like this. The icy wind howled through the cracks in the windows of Emily Carter's apartment, rattling the fragile panes and seeping into every corner of the small, cluttered space. It was the kind of cold that pierced layers and settled in the bones, but Emily barely noticed it anymore. She stood in the dim kitchen, wrapped in an old sweater that had seen better days, staring at the meager contents of the refrigerator. 2 eggs, a carton of milk nearing its expiration date, and a stick of butter were all that remained. Her stomach growled, but she pushed the thought aside. Whatever she could scrape together would go to her son Jack first. Outside, the streets were blanketed in snow, but the beauty of it was lost on Emily. To her, winter meant higher heating bills she couldn't afford, and the constant fear of falling further behind. Emily's world revolved around Jack, her 8-year-old son, whose bright eyes and unshakable optimism were her only source of light. Every morning, she donned her uniform and trudged to the diner on the corner, where she worked long hours for tips that barely covered the essentials. The regulars knew her name and always greeted her with a smile, but they didn't see the exhaustion etched into her face, or the nights she cried herself to sleep, worrying about how she'd make ends meet. Jack was her anchor, her reason for fighting through every hardship. His laughter filled the tiny apartment with a warmth that no amount of financial stability could replace. But as resilient as Emily was, the cracks in her armor were beginning to show. Jack sat cross-legged on the living room floor, his tongue poking out in concentration as he sketched on a piece of paper. His dream house was coming to life in vibrant colors, a house with a big backyard, a tree house, and a swing set. "One day we'll live here, Mom," he said with unwavering confidence, holding up his drawing. Emily forced a smile, her heart breaking a little at his innocence. She wanted to believe in his dream, but reality loomed large. "It's beautiful, sweetheart," she said, ruffling his hair. Jack's imagination was boundless, and his ability to see the good in everything reminded her of the person she used to be. His drawings adorned the walls of their apartment, each one a testament to his hope and creativity. The kitchen table was strewn with unopened envelopes, each one stamped with ominous warnings in bold red letters. Emily sat with her head in her hands, the weight of it all pressing down on her. She'd lost track of how many payment plans she'd set up and how many calls she'd made to beg for extensions. The numbers didn't add up, no matter how many extra shifts she picked up. It was never enough. The rent was due in 3 days and she didn't have it. Jack peeked around the corner, sensing her distress. "Are you okay, Mom?" he asked softly. Emily wiped her eyes quickly and smiled. "I'm fine, honey, just grown-up stuff." But Jack wasn't convinced. His little shoulders slumped and Emily's heart ached. She had to hold it together for him, no matter what. The knock on the door came early in the morning, sharp and insistent. Emily opened it to find a man in a suit holding a clipboard. He handed her an envelope without meeting her eyes. "Sorry, ma'am, you've got 30 days to vacate," he said before turning and walking away. Emily stared at the notice, her hands trembling. The words blurred as tears filled her eyes. Jack tugged at her sleeve, looking up at her with concern. "What's wrong, Mom?" he asked, his voice small. Emily dropped to her knees and hugged him tightly, burying her face in his hair. "Everything's going to be okay," she whispered, even though she didn't believe it. The weight of their reality crushed her, but she couldn't let Jack see her fall apart. Not now. Not ever. Emily's trembling hand gripped the eviction notice as she climbed the creaking stairs to her landlord's office. The faint scent of stale coffee and mildew greeted her as she stepped into the cluttered, dimly lit room. Mr. Victor Steele sat behind a battered wooden desk, his thin, framed glasses perched precariously on his nose. His sharp, cold eyes barely flickered as she entered. "Miss Carter," he said curtly, barely looking up from the stack of papers in front of him. "You've had plenty of time to catch up on your rent. I've been more than lenient." Emily's voice cracked as she tried to explain, her desperation spilling out in rushed words. "Please, Mr. Steele, I just need a little more time. I've been working double shifts, and my son—" Mr. Steele raised a hand, silencing her mid-sentence. "I'm running a business, not a charity. The notice stands. You have until the end of the month to vacate." Tears welled in Emily's eyes as she stumbled out of the office, clutching the paper like it was a death sentence. Outside, the winter wind cut through her thin coat, mirroring the icy chill she felt inside. She knew she couldn't let Jack see her break, but the weight of the world pressed down harder than ever. The diner was unusually quiet that night, the hum of the coffee machine the only sound filling the empty booths. Emily's coworker, Maria, placed a steaming cup of tea in front of her as they sat at the counter during a lull. Maria's eyes, warm and filled with concern, scanned Emily's tired face. "You're not alone, mija," Maria said softly, placing a reassuring hand on Emily's. "We'll figure something out." Emily nodded, though her heart felt heavy with doubt. Her neighbor, Mrs. Thompson, had also offered to help watch Jack after school while Emily worked longer hours. These small gestures of kindness were a balm to her weary soul, even as the looming eviction hung over her like a storm cloud. It was a Tuesday afternoon when Keanu Reeves walked into the diner. Emily didn't recognize him at first. His dark beanie and oversized scarf obscured his face. He slid into a booth by the window, his gaze distant but kind. Emily approached with her notepad, ready to take his order. "Hi there," she said, forcing a smile. "What can I get for you?" Keanu looked up, and their eyes met. For a brief moment, he saw the weariness etched into her features. "Just a coffee," he said with a small smile. "Black, please." As Emily walked away, Keanu's attention was drawn to a small boy sitting at a corner table, furiously sketching in a worn notebook. Jack's laughter filled the diner as he showed his mother a colorful drawing of a house with a red door and a big tree in the yard. Keanu's heart softened. There was something about their interaction that lingered with him. Over the next few days, Keanu became a regular at the diner. He observed Emily's quiet strength, the way she juggled serving customers while keeping a watchful eye on Jack. He noticed the lines of exhaustion on her face, the way she brightened when Jack laughed, and the subtle way she hid her struggles from the world. One evening, as the diner emptied out, he overheard Emily talking to Maria about her eviction. She spoke in hushed tones, her voice thick with worry. Keanu's heart ached as he listened. He knew he couldn't stand by and do nothing. That night, Emily sat with Jack in their cramped living room. The flickering light of a single lamp illuminated his latest drawing. "What's this one, buddy?" Emily asked, her voice soft. "It's our new house, Mommy," Jack said excitedly. "See, this is your room, and this is mine, and there's a big kitchen where we can make pancakes every morning." Emily's chest tightened as she fought back tears. "It's beautiful, Jack," she whispered, pulling him into a tight hug. His dreams gave her hope, even when reality felt insurmountable. The next day, Keanu approached Emily as she cleared a table. "Excuse me," he said, his voice gentle. "Can I talk to you for a moment?" Emily hesitated, wiping her hands on her apron. "Of course," she said, leading him to an empty booth. "I couldn't help but overhear your conversation the other night," Keanu began, his expression earnest. I know it's not my place, but I want to help." Emily's brows furrowed. "Help?" "I'd like to cover your rent and help you find a new place to live," Keanu said simply. "No strings attached." Tears sprang to Emily's eyes. She shook her head. I can't accept that. It's too much." "Please, Keanu said, his voice firm but kind. "You deserve a break, and I'm in a position to give you one." Emily's mind raced as she processed Keanu's offer. She wanted to believe in his sincerity, but fear and pride held her back. "Why would you do this for us?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Keanu smiled, a hint of sadness in his eyes. "Because I've been there. I know what it's like to struggle, and because I see how hard you're fighting for your son." Emily's resolve began to crack. She looked over at Jack, who was happily coloring in his corner of the diner. For him, she thought, for his future. That night, Emily lay awake in bed, her thoughts a whirlwind of doubt and hope. Could she trust a stranger with such an extraordinary offer? What if it came with hidden strings? But the memory of Keanu's kindness and Jack's bright smile pushed her fears aside. In the end, she decided to take the leap. She had nothing to lose and everything to gain for Jack. The next day, Emily and Keanu sat down for coffee. Keanu opened up about his past, sharing stories of loss and struggle. He spoke of his own mother, who had worked tirelessly to support him, and how her strength inspired him to help others. Emily listened intently, her heart softening with every word. For the first time, she saw not just a movie star, but a kindred spirit, someone who understood what it meant to fight for survival. With a mixture of trepidation and hope, Emily accepted Keanu's help. Together they began searching for a new home, one where Jack could finally have his dream room and a safe place to grow. The chapter ends with Emily and Jack stepping into their new house for the first time. Jack's laughter echoed through the empty rooms as Emily felt a weight lift from her shoulders. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to believe in a brighter future. The small house stood at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac, its white picket fence slightly weathered but still sturdy. For Emily, it was nothing short of a miracle. As she pushed open the gate with trembling hands, she felt Jack's small fingers tighten around hers. His wide eyes darted from the freshly painted shutters to the flower beds brimming with light. "Mom, is this really ours?" Jack whispered, his voice tinged with wonder. Emily nodded, her voice caught in her throat. The realtor handed her the keys with a warm smile, but it was Keanu's gentle encouragement in the background that kept her from breaking down entirely. The house wasn't extravagant, but to Emily, it was a palace. A place where Jack could have his own room, where they could finally sleep without the fear of being forced to leave. As they stepped inside, sunlight poured through the windows, bathing the hardwood floors in a golden glow. For the first time in years, Emily felt a spark of hope ignite in her chest. The alarm clock buzzed at 6 a.m., but this time, Emily didn't wake up in a panic. She glanced around her modest but cozy bedroom, the faint smell of fresh paint still lingering in the air. Today was her first day at her new job, a position Keanu had helped her secure at a local community center. It wasn't just a paycheck, it was a chance to rebuild her confidence and rediscover her sense of purpose. Walking Jack to school, Emily felt a mix of nerves and excitement. Jack skipped ahead, chattering about his new teacher and the friends he was making. Emily's heart swelled as she kissed him goodbye, his infectious smile filling her with strength. At the community center, Emily met her supervisor, a kind woman named Linda, who immediately put her at ease. The work was demanding but fulfilling, and by the end of the day, Emily felt a sense of accomplishment she hadn't experienced in years. The new neighborhood was unlike anything Emily had experienced before. Neighbors stopped by with welcome gifts and invitations to community events. Mrs. Jenkins from next door offered Emily gardening tips, while Mr. Alvarez from down the street helped fix the leaky faucet in the kitchen. Jack made fast friends with the other children, and soon the backyard was filled with the sound of laughter and the thud of basketballs against pavement. Emily's evenings were no longer consumed by worry. Instead, she found herself sharing meals and stories with her neighbors. The sense of belonging was unfamiliar, but deeply comforting. Jack's transformation was nothing short of remarkable. At his new school, he flourished under the guidance of patient teachers and surrounded by supportive classmates. One evening, he bounded into the house, clutching a certificate for outstanding creativity and a vibrant watercolor painting of their new home. "Look, Mom, I painted our house, just like I always dreamed." Jack beamed, his cheeks flushed with pride. Emily hugged him tightly, her tears dampening his hair. "It's beautiful, sweetheart, just like you." His joy became her lifeline, a reminder of why she had fought so hard to give him a better life. Late one night, after Jack had fallen asleep, Emily sat by the window, gazing out at the stars. The weight of the past years pressed heavily on her chest. She still struggled with feelings of inadequacy, haunted by the belief that she should have been able to do it all on her own. Keanu's words from weeks ago echoed in her mind. "It's okay to accept help, Emily. It doesn't make you weak, it makes you human." With a deep breath, she allowed herself to let go of the shame. For the first time, she acknowledged her own strength in surviving and persevering. She wasn't just a victim of circumstance. She was a warrior who had fought for her son's future. Keanu's visits became a regular occurrence. Whether it was dropping by to check on the house or sharing a cup of coffee at the diner, his presence was a steady source of comfort. One afternoon, he brought a book for Emily, its worn cover bearing the title, "The Gifts of Imperfection." "This helped me when I was going through a tough time," he said, sliding it across the table. "I think you might find something in it too." Emily's fingers brushed against his as she took the book, her eyes meeting his. "Thank you, Keanu, for everything." "You don't owe me anything, Emily," he replied softly. "Just keep being the amazing mom and person you are." One Saturday morning, Keanu arrived with a surprise for Jack, a set of high-quality art supplies. Jack's eyes lit up as he tore through the packaging, pulling out colored pencils, paints, and sketch pads. "They're your dreams, buddy," Keanu said with a smile. Jack threw his arms around Keanu, his gratitude spilling out in excited chatter. Emily watched from the doorway, her heart swelling at the sight of her son's joy. Despite her newfound stability, Emily faced challenges at work and in her personal life. The community center's funding was at risk, and Emily found herself spearheading a fundraising campaign. The pressure was immense, but with Keanu's encouragement and the support of her neighbors, she found the strength to persevere. At home, Jack began asking questions about his absent father. Emily navigated these conversations with honesty and care, ensuring Jack felt loved and secure. Inspired by her own journey, Emily began volunteering at a local shelter, sharing her story with women facing similar struggles. Her empathy and resilience made her a beacon of hope, and she found a deep sense of fulfillment in helping others. Emily's story became a catalyst for change in her community. Neighbors organized donation drives, businesses offered support to struggling families, and the spirit of compassion spread like wildfire. Emily's small acts of kindness had created a ripple effect, transforming not just her own life but the lives of countless others. The chapter ends with Emily standing in her garden, watching Jack play with his friends, her heart full of gratitude and hope for the future. Emily sat in her modest but cozy living room, the scent of freshly baked cookies wafting through the air. It was a small luxury she hadn't been able to afford in years, but tonight felt special. Jack's laughter echoed from his room as he chatted animatedly with a friend over the phone. Emily's heart swelled with a mixture of pride and disbelief at how far they had come. She glanced at the clock, knowing Keanu would be arriving soon. He had insisted on dropping by for tea before leaving town for his next film. As the knock echoed at the door, Emily opened it to find Keanu standing there with his signature unassuming smile, holding a bouquet of sunflowers. "I thought these might brighten your evening," he said, handing them to her. Emily felt her throat tighten as she invited him inside. As they sat, sipping tea, Emily's gratitude spilled over. "I don't know if I'll ever be able to thank you enough, Keanu," she began, her voice quivering. "You've done more for Jack and me than I could ever repay." Keanu placed his cup down and met her eyes. "You've repaid me in ways you don't even realize," he said softly. "Your strength, your love for Jack, your resilience, it's inspiring. Sometimes, all people need is a little help to reveal the greatness they already possess." Tears welled up in Emily's eyes as she listened. For the first time in years, she felt seen, not as a struggling single mother, but as someone capable of overcoming the odds. The school auditorium buzzed with excitement. Parents filled the seats, cameras at the ready. Jack was seated in the front row, clutching his sketchbook nervously. Today was the art showcase, and Jack's painting, The Dream House, had been chosen as the highlight of the event. As the principal announced his name, Jack stood, his small figure radiating pride and nerves. Emily watched with tears streaming down her face as her son walked onto the stage. His painting depicted a house surrounded by warmth and light, with a mother and son standing arm in arm. The caption read, "Home is where we're together." When Jack spoke into the microphone, his voice was steady but filled with emotion. "This is for my mom," he said. "She's the strongest person I know. And for Mr. Keanu Reeves, who showed us kindness when we needed it most." The crowd erupted into applause. Emily's heart felt like it might burst. Keanu, seated beside her, leaned in and whispered, "Jack's got quite the gift. I'd say he's destined for great things." That night, Emily sat by the window, gazing at the stars. She thought back to the darkest moments of her life, when hope seemed like a distant dream. The eviction notice, the nights she cried herself to sleep, the fear of failing Jack. They all felt like distant memories now. She opened a worn journal and began to write, recounting the journey that had brought her to this point. Each word felt like a release, a way to honor the struggle and celebrate the triumph. She wrote about Jack's unwavering spirit, the kindness of strangers, and the man who had become an unlikely guardian angel in their lives. "We've come so far," she whispered to herself, closing the journal. The reflection wasn't just about their past, it was about embracing the future with open arms. A few days later, Emily received a package in the mail. Inside was a handwritten letter from Keanu, along with a small box. She unfolded the letter, her hands trembling slightly. "Dear Emily, as I leave for my next adventure, I wanted to take a moment to express how much meeting you and Jack has meant to me. Your strength has reminded me of the importance of perseverance and kindness. Enclosed is a small token of my appreciation, a trust fund for Jack's education. I hope it will help him achieve all the dreams he's sketched so. Never stop believing in yourself. You're a remarkable woman, and the world is better with you in it. Warm regards, Keanu." Tears streamed down Emily's face as she opened the box to find a certificate for the trust fund. Jack rushed into the room, concerned by her tears, but she pulled him into a tight embrace. "These are happy tears, sweetheart," she said, her voice thick with emotion. Months turned into years. Emily had settled into her job and even started taking night classes to further her career. Jack's art began gaining recognition, with his Dream House series being featured in local galleries. One sunny afternoon, Emily and Jack sat on the porch of their little house, looking out at the garden they had planted together. Laughter filled the air as they talked about their dreams for the future. "Do you think Mr. Keanu will visit us again?" Jack asked, his eyes hopeful. Emily smiled. "Maybe one day, but even if he doesn't, he'll always be a part of our story." As the sun dipped below the horizon, Emily felt a profound sense of peace. Their journey had been filled with struggles, but it had also been filled with love, kindness, and the unwavering belief that better days were possible. And in that moment, with Jack's hand in hers and the future wide open before them, she knew they had found their happy ending.